This is intended as a brief video to introduce TOK Essay Title 2, Is Our Most Revered Knowledge More Fragile Than We Assume It to Be? And this is with reference in particular
The question stipulates that you must focus on the arts and one other area of
mathematics,
knowledge.
human sciences, natural sciences, or
The
history.
question stipulates that you must
What
focus.
the approach I like to take is to consider the TOK concepts and how these might help us to unpack the question. When I think about revered knowledge, what comes to mind first of all is the idea of truth. If we revere knowledge, if we respect it, if we hold it up as being the most accurate and useful knowledge we have, but there's an implication that this may well be the truth or the most truthful picture that we have. So that might be a useful concept to begin with. Secondly, when we think about something as being fragile, the fragility of knowledge, that perhaps implies that there's an element to do with certainty here. How certain are we that this is true? How can we be certain? What is the justification for believing these particular ideas or theories to be accurate? Finally, if we're thinking about revered knowledge, another concept that could be useful here is to think about power. Right? Revered knowledge has the power to influence people as it's transmitted to the wider public. It has that influence. It has a staying power, a durability in a sense. To continue to unpack this question, we need to think about what knowledge is in the arts. After all, that is stipulated here. So which knowledge is revered in the arts? For instance, we may consider that if an art piece or artist is revered, is that the same as if artistic knowledge is being revered? That's something to consider and to unpack. When we think about the most revered knowledge in other areas of knowledge, we need to consider carefully what might be meant by revered knowledge in the human sciences, natural sciences, history, or mathematics. For instance, in mathematics, much of what we know has been discovered many centuries ago, if not thousands of years ago. So moving on then to the idea that it might be more fragile than we assume it to be. Do we assume that knowledge is durable, unchanging, and permanent? That's what's implied here, is that we perhaps assume that revered knowledge is durable and permanent, which of course then brings us on to the idea of why might knowledge be fragile. Are there examples of knowledge being fragile? Which maybe makes us think a little bit about the notion of a paradigm shift within our understanding. Are there examples of truths being challenged? And finally, this brings us on to one of the core concepts of TOK, which is the impermanence of knowledge, the provisionality of knowledge. So this is certainly a question that takes quite a bit of unpacking. Finally, is some revered knowledge the opposite of fragile? Is some revered knowledge substantial, durable, permanent, or built on solid foundations? And for me, what comes to mind here perhaps is to think about earliest discoveries in mathematics that we still consider and teach to people right from primary school onwards. So this is just a beginning of unpacking some of the questions for you that might be useful. From here, you need to be thinking about your own examples that will fit in with this. I want to take a moment just to thank Mr. Luke Smith and all the other staff at BIS for their input on these questions.